Hey everyone, I'm Tene Greenhood. Thanks for spending a few minutes with me. I just wanted to do a quick highlight reel of the webinar. Unfortunately, I was sick and wasn't able to participate in as much as I was hoping, and so I just want to take a few minutes to kind of give you some of the highlights that I think are most important. And so I'm going to give you a spoiler alert. I'm a big fan of conciseness and being straightforward, so here it goes. If you are interested in figuring out how ExPrep can save you time, give your students a better experience, catch cheaters, and help students learn Excel, then continue watching because those are the things that ExPrep did for me. And I'm going to kind of share how that happened and how that could also have an impact on you in your classroom. We'll start out with just a little bit of my background of who I am and where I came from. And so I became involved in education in 2012 and then started adjunct teaching primarily accounting classes with a few business classes, then became full-time faculty department chair, and then recently transferred to Colorado State University Pueblo, where I now teach accounting full-time. I also shared a picture here of my two little boys, and the reason for that is because the impact that ExPrep has had on me doesn't just impact me as an educator, but has had an impact on my entire life and has given me more time to spend with my kids. And so I really appreciate that and value that. As far as the classes go, I teach a whole handful of accounting classes. Primarily in the recent years, I've been teaching mostly intro to financial and managerial, personal income tax, intermediate 2, and advanced financial. So what was my dilemma that led me to ExPrep? And when I started teaching, I was just surviving. The very first time I taught, I was literally thrown an accounting book by my department chair and started teaching the next night. And so I was just drinking from a fire hose. And then with time, I became, a better professor and better teacher and presenter of the content. And so I had a moment to step back and realize that I thought there were some issues with the publisher content. I wasn't happy with all of the content. I saw students cheating and Googling the answers very easily. And I saw students just learning how to manipulate a platform, but not necessarily learning the accounting. And so I was concerned with that. And I started creating all of my own content in Excel. That took me a lot of time, and it took me even more time to grade that content. That wasn't feasible. And I knew that I couldn't keep doing that. So I was either going to have to give fewer assignments, grade for participation, or figure something else out. And so I opted for the third option. And so I redesigned my content and created my Excel assignments to be primarily self-graded. And I was pretty happy with that. I thought it was doing a decent job. It wasn't perfect. So I was still having to go in and spend around 10 minutes per assignment catching things that Excel wasn't automatically catching for me. So in instances like where students maybe rounded differently than me, students that made a mistake and then that mistake came forward and I wanted to give them partial credit for that, instances where there was multiple ways that they could have laid out a journal entry, like a compound entry, and my system didn't understand that they could list the debits in any order, just things like that. It was taking me around 10 minutes per assignment. I have roughly 120 students a semester, so that was around 20 hours a week. And honestly, I was happy with that. I was thinking it was a lot better than what was happening in the previous semester when I was just grading my own content completely. And so I was ignoring the emails that I was getting from ExPrep because I thought that they couldn't do it better than I was already doing it. I figured they probably couldn't do all the things I wanted them to do. And I thought I was doing okay with the 10 minutes per assignment. So I just ignored their emails. And then the cheating is what ultimately led me to ExPrep. After I spent all that time creating these new assignments and getting them up with my students and just working out all the kinks, the very next semester, my self-authored assignments were shared online and you could Google the answers and purchase them off the internet. And so I was just at my wit's end and decided to give ExPrep a look. So I checked out their website and saw that cheating was one of the aspects that they could account for that I couldn't already do. And so I sent them one of my assignments. After I submitted that content to them, they did a demo showing me my own content in the platform, and I was completely sold. The rest is history, and I wouldn't go back. And so let's go ahead and look at exactly what that solution was and why it helped me so much. And so the solution obviously is ExPrep. And what it was doing for me was it was preventing cheating. And not only was it preventing students from that were just sharing a file and submitting the same file, it was also preventing students from copying cells and from somebody else's Excel sheet and pasting them into their own Excel sheet. It was telling me it was telling me both students involved, and it can go back multiple semesters. And so all of a sudden, a lot of the issues that I was having with cheating were just resolved. And when students realized that I was going to have that report that said, hey, so and so, you copied from so and so, like what the two of you have to say for yourselves, it stopped very quickly. I also was able to have quick data set updates. And so with some of the time that I've saved, which is what I've mentioned previously, is that it saved me a bunch of time. I've been able to use that to update my assignments and create multiple versions of the assignments, which just continues to minimize the cheating. So that's been really great. It's grading faster and better than me. So the reason I say faster and better is obviously it's faster because it's happening instantly. So students can instantly get feedback rather than waiting until 20 hours into the next week after an assignment is due. And they appreciate that, and it is helpful, especially in accounting where information is continuing to build on itself. But it's grading better than me because it is catching instances where students made a mistake and that mistake is continued forward and can adjust and give them credit back. And so I was doing that manually, but I wasn't always catching it perfectly, and ExPrep is catching that. It's also accounting for a margin of error. And so that's been really great because if students just round differently than I did or are using formulas slightly different than I did or use, it can account for that and adjust it. And so that's saving me from the student that says, like, this was counted wrong, but it was only, 50 cents off, and the conversations that follow after that. And there's layers of feedback. So I've been able to integrate my feedback into the assignments. And so when students miss a particular cell, it will give them feedback. And I can do that in multiple stages. So the first time they submit it, it can give them pretty vague feedback. And then the second time they submit it, if they missed it again, maybe I'm telling them the page in the book to visit. And then the third time, if they missed it, I can all but give them the answer. And so that's been really great because from what I've seen, students need that feedback and they need it quickly to be as successful as possible. And so ExPrep has helped me give that to them. There were also some unexpected solutions, one of which is that students are really learning how to use Excel. And so with ExPrep, the system can be grading for if they used Excel functions and formulas, specific ones or just any one. And so a lot of times I'm just saying they have to cell reference or they have to use a formula. I don't care how they did it, which formula they used, but I want them to be using Excel. And so that was something that ExPrep was offering me that I wasn't doing myself when I was manually grading or like kind of Excel was helping me grade. And it's been really, really great to see students doing that. But I also use the Excel training content provided by ExPrep and require that my students complete those modules. And just seeing the impact that's had on students has been so wonderful. I've had such great feedback of students saying things like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, like, I thought I knew everything about Excel, and then I did this module, and now I know these other things, and I know how I'm going to apply that in industry, and I can't wait to get to work and be able to do this new thing. And so that's been really great. And there's been great student feedback on my teacher evaluations. Previously, I was getting comments like, I don't know why Professor Greenhood insists that we use Excel. This isn't an Excel class. Complaints that the assignments were in Excel. And now that has really shifted to, I'm so grateful for what I learned in Excel. I think the skills I learned in Excel for this class have been really great. It's been really awesome to be able to use Excel to make accounting easier. And so those comments have been a very pleasant surprise. And so now I just challenge you to think about, what would you do with an extra 15 hours each week? Because that's roughly what ExPrep saved me. I was spending around 20 hours a week grading, and using their system, I've been able to cut that down. I now spend about 5 hours a week grading those assignments. And the reason I'm spending those 5 hours a week is just because I'm very anal, I guess you could say. And so I still like to open up every assignment and see if there's different feedback I need to be providing students, or see if there's a common missed item that I need to address. And so I probably could get away with less than that, but if we're being honest, I'm probably still spending about 5 hours a week. So just take a second to think about that. If you had 15 hours extra every week that you didn't have right now, what would you do with that time? For me, it was giving my students more of my time, giving my family more of my time, and spending more time perfecting and improving my content. And so I was available to my students, for more direct one-on-one feedback in my office. And I was available with my family. Like I said previously, that's why I showed you a picture of my boys. I was able to see them more often because I wasn't spending so much time after dinner and in the night trying to grade assignments. And I was able to put a lot of time into improving my content, creating multiple versions of assignments, creating all new content. I spent a lot of time creating a new data analytics problem, which I'm really excited about, and I'm going to talk about a little bit in a second. And so I've been able to improve myself as a teacher in my classroom using that extra time. So what were the major issues that I had with grading prior to ExPrep? I wasn't accounting for a margin of error, or my self-created grading system wasn't accounting for a margin of error. So if students were off slightly, it was counting it wrong, and I had to go back through the files and find all of those. My system couldn't account for the compound journal entries and figure out that those could be in different orders. I wasn't grading correctly for an absolute value. So if I counted it, if I said it should be negative, the student had to list it negative. And in some of my earlier classes, like my principles classes, I actually give them credit regardless of how they enter the number, or at least partial credit, and ExPrep can do that for me. So that's something I no longer have to do manually. I also had to manually find any carry forward mistakes, and I was providing manual feedback. And even though I was copying and pasting that, because a lot of times, as you know, as a professor, they make the same mistakes students do. So I had all the common feedback I was giving in a document and pasting it, but it still took a lot of time. So having ExPrep on my side, it is accounting for the margin of error and absolute values, and can grade those to whatever degree I say. So if I say I want it to account for anything that's within 0.5% of my answer correct, then that's what it'll do. It does account for the compound entries and can understand the various orders. It's providing custom and layered feedback. Like I was saying, I can grow the feedback, and they're getting that instantly, which is a lot more impactful than getting it, a week later. It is adjusting for carry forward mistakes. It's accounting for and grading if students are using formulas when I tell the system that it must. It's preventing file sharing, and it's allowing me to create multiple versions and provide students with multiple versions on their homework and their exams. So we will also look at, I just mentioned that I've created a big data analytics problem. I'm really excited about it. It has like almost 350 rows of data, and the students have to take that data and then clean it up, import some more information, and use a whole variety of formulas and different aspects, create pivot tables and pivot charts, and create a really nice interactive dashboard. And so without ExPrep, if I was just using a publisher's content, really the only thing that we can grade for is that we're asking them to use their dashboard to respond to 6 questions at the end. And if they didn't clean up their data correctly, then they can't answer those questions. The issue with that is that obviously they can just cheat and Google the answers or use a friend's dashboard. And so that's a big problem. And then we don't know that they actually did use all the specific formulas and requirements within Excel. And so it requires us just to grade those 6 questions and then kind of do a quick review of their dashboard, but we don't really have time to look through all the rows of the 350 rows of data that we asked them to clean up. But with ExPrep, the world's problems are solved. You can see on the right, I just have a kind of some screenshots of the dashboard and some of the data, so you can't really see much from that, but just to help give you kind of a visual of what we're looking at. And so ExPrep is grading that they did use the formulas, so whatever it is that I said, the clean, the trim, X lookup, V lookup, whatever it is, it's checking that they did that. It's grading that they created the pivot tables, and not only that they created them, but they used the right data in the different aspects of the pivot table. It's grading the same 6N questions that I was using before, and it's also preventing the file sharing. And because of how I created this file, it's allowing us to use multiple versions, well, to create multiple versions very quickly. So I used a random generator, and so now I can very quickly, like in a matter of 10 minutes, create a whole new data set. And so I think that's really exciting because now like within a few semesters, every single student is going to have a completely unique data set to work on. So is ExPrep going to solve the world's problems? That's what I want to leave you with. And of course, I don't think they're going to solve the world's problems. I don't think they have their eyes set on the whole world's problems. But what I can tell you is that they solved my world's problems. And so as a professor, I was struggling and upset about what was happening in the classroom with the cheating and just the publisher content in general. Or in retrospect, also the time commitment that it was taking me to do what I thought I needed to do to be a good professor. And so ExPrep solved my world's problems, and I think that they could do that for you too. And at the end of the day, I urge you just to send them an assignment and let them put it into the platform and show you what it could look like. And there's no commitment from doing that. There's no cost in doing that. You can just see what it would look like for you. And I encourage you to do that because I think you'd be very pleasantly surprised at how wonderful ExPrep can be. So that's it for me. I appreciate your time and I wish you all the best. If you'd like to connect with me, even not ExPrep related, but just professor related, accounting related, I would be happy to connect with you. My work email is tene.greenhood@csupueblo.edu, and I look forward to talking to you. Thanks.